Good evening, guys. I am conducting a video here today on the bishop's opening. Excuse me, let me get that off the screen. And the 1 e4, e5, 2 bishop c4 is the bishop's opening. Now, what's funny about this is that if you just go back, for example, to this, all of a sudden, for example, now you're in a Hungarian defense and gioco piano. And if you play that move, b4, you have now entered the Evans gambit. According to the computer, declined and accepted, whatever that means. So, uh, let's see. Oops. And that's another variation of the classical Hungarian defense. That, if you play that move there, that is the Blackburn-Schilling gambit, but it is also considered a Roy Lopez Bird's defense. Yeah, I'm not making that up. You can look it up if you don't believe me. So, it's definitely far more commonly known as the Blackburn-Schilling gambit. So if you play the knight d5 move, oops. What else? If you play c3 here instead of bishop out to c4, you're entering the Ponziani and Scotch gambit, which is a lot of fun. And let's see. That's a Roy Lopez classical, obviously. You could go into an exchange or not. It's up to you. And wait a minute. Oops. Well, I'm trying to get back to a different variation. Let's see yes, there it was. Yeah. Yeah. So here, if you play that is a standard bishop's opening. Well, it is and it isn't. I mean, technically the bishop's opening is bishop c4 on move 2, but it's the same exact structure if you went bishop c4 on move 2 and then knight f3. But the funny thing is here now, if you play oops, not that. Not that. Excuse me. Ah, well, trying to get back. Let's see. Yeah, so here if you play, oops. Yeah, right there. There it is. Ah, finally. That is the Evans gambit. So you can experiment and have a lot of fun in that system. I don't play the Evans gambit. I think it's a little nebulous and hopeful, and not at all a road I enjoy going down to. It's already showing a negative 0.17 on Komodo 9, and that's not. I'm not knocking it. I mean, you can definitely win some rapids and some blitz games, but if you're trying to play serious chess, I don't recommend the Evans Gambit at all. So, now Komodo 9 is showing a negative 0.24, so that's just too. That's giving way too much up in the opening. Okay, I digress. Let's get back to the theme of the day, which is the bishop's opening. Oops. Ah, yeah, there we go. Okay, so bishop c4. Um, where is that? I'm trying to think. Knight e2 on move 2. Oh yeah, this before I get into the game, I have to show you something really intriguing and funny. Instead of playing the Evans Gambit, why don't you play this wackadoo opening? Give this a shot in your next Blitz game. I just came across this today, and Black obviously has a lot of moves. I don't have time to analyze every single move in the position, but if he plays like this, Knight F6, you immediately challenge the center. Black captures this pawn. White kicks the knight. White now captures the pawn. Knight over to a reasonable looking square. Bishop out, securing the pawn. This is absolutely wackadoo. Knight out to c6. Knight out to c3. d6. White captures. Bishop captures. Queen up. Castles. Castles. Rook over. Knight to b5. Queen over. Knight captures. Offering a trade. Black still looking for some kind of hope. It's not going to come. And I'll just stop here, but White is showing an advantage of about 0.82. It's fluctuating between 0.77 and 0.80 something on Komodo 9, and theoretically from here it should be a fairly easy technical win, but I just thought I'd show that before we delve into the the topic of the day. But I just thought that was an incredibly weird and wacky offbeat opening that actually has a lot of poison in it. So don't always be so sure that weird looking moves aren't going somewhere very scary, because sometimes they do. Okay, so I digressed. So back to the topic. Finally, okay. Bishop out to c4, signaling the bishop's opening. c6 is often played against the bishop's opening, and it's a good move. Multi-purpose, obviously stopping ideas of d5 or knight b5, knight d5, etc., etc. Black immediately challenging the center here. And here you could capture with the knight. And that's a very principled way to play. There's nothing particularly wrong about it, but kind of runs into this issue here. See, this black starts getting fairly decent counterplay, which is not very comfortable. So that's why I don't really like that move too much. There's probably better moves in the position for white, but in truth, let's just go back to what I prefer, which is bishop captures. And as you can see, the bishop is raking along both those miniature diagonals, looking at the rook on a8, looking at the knight potentially on g8, certainly looking to possibly check the king. There's lots of ideas there, and in fact, Komodo's giving a significantly larger edge to this move than it was to the knight takes d5. So to me, knight takes d5, while eminently playable, is somewhat of a subtle inaccuracy. So anyways, from here, oops. The more principled move is knight f6. Knight d7 is not that good a move, and I'll just briefly run through why that's the case, because as you can see, black's space and counterplay is instantly really not looking good at all, and it's flat out losing now. Komodo now is reaching for about a plus 6 point nearly advantage. It just went to nearly plus 7. Yeah, now it's well over 7. And I think it's fixing to go well over 8. Yep, just went over 8. I'll just briefly run through this line. Don't want to analyze this too much. But you can, I mean, black is just getting destroyed here. That's not, it's not even funny. That's like, nope, that's just horrific beyond belief. That's, and mate, yeah. In fact, it's however you want it there. That's, I could ah, just do that. That's mate also, obviously. Okay, going back. That was why knight d7 is not a good idea there. So, oops. The more principled move is knight f6, immediately hitting the bishop. Bishop drops back to b3. We've seen that in a lot of classical play. Too many systems to name, so I'm not going to even try. But I know Bobby Fischer is probably the most famous for often dropping his bishop back to either b3 or in some cases even a2. And it's a great regrouping. Resets sort of the bishop, gets it out of harm's way. Okay, bishop out to b4. Pawn kicks it. Black makes a choice and decides not to take on the knight, and instead elects for a subtle blockade on d6. Pawn d3. Knight c6. Bishop e3. Knight down to d4. White does not yet want to take, so it gives this intermezzo check. Notice now that up until this moment, black could have castled. Probably was not wise in awaiting the castle. I think in retrospect, black probably should have castled, but it is what it is. Of course, an alternative move is this, and if that's the case, then white trades off and starts to strengthen the center. A defensive h3, bishop out, bishop takes, pawn takes, rook takes, knight over. And I'll just run through this line. And this is an interesting approach, sort of playing on two wings, closing up the center, playing on both sides of the board. A little bit Karpovian or Petrosian, in my opinion. Probably not the only way to play this position. I think I would have preferred a gung-ho, go all out on the king side. May not have worked. I don't know. I haven't analyzed that enough in depth. I'm just going to go ahead and run through this and very interesting end game here. It's two sets of minor pieces. But again, two knights is probably going to overcome a bishop in a mostly closed up position. King gets involved. Well, they both do, in fact. Bishop thinks it can preserve itself, but that's a temporary. I'll just briefly run through this. It's mostly just technical. And from here, Komodo's giving a plus 5.50 advantage and growing. And I'll run this out to mate. Yeah, it's a weird looking mate there. Just knight over to c5. I'm sure there were other mates in the position. Anyways, that's not the line I wanted to analyze, but just wanted to show what could happen if y'all do end up down a road like that. And I love this position of the two knights just totally securing each other, which knights are known to do, and they love doing that. And okay, anyways, I digress. Okay, let's get on back. Where were we? Almost there. Yeah, so here, king moves over in this line. So knight up, bishop to c5, castles, knight over, excuse me, king over to g8, bishop takes knight, which may look a little strange, but you'll see the point here in a minute. Pawn takes, kicking the knight. Knight takes knight, probably a wise decision. Pawn takes. a5, ultra aggressive. Looking to obviously trade off the bishops and then probably push b5 and cause some kind of helter-skelter on the queen side. c3, saying I'm not going to give you time to think about that move. Bishop over. Pawn takes. Bishop takes. Queen takes. And that's probably a move you're only going to see a computer make. I'd be surprised if you'd ever see a human being make this bishop takes e2 move, but you might. I don't know, because we are all using computer lines now as a part of real world over the board play. Here, queen takes queen, rook takes rook over, escaping the bishop. Rook up to c7, pawn down, kicking the bishop. Bishop drops back to b3. Bishop's trade, pawn takes bishop. Rook gobbles the pawn, rook down to d2. Okay, I'll just kind of run through some of this. It's mostly just an academic ending. That's a good move. Pawn up. And Komodo 9 is already giving about a 2-point advantage, which is absolutely winning apart from blunders. So I'll just briefly run through this. Just good standard technique. I love that h6 move because that's a long-term thorn in black's side. There's ideas of the king coming to f6 at some point, or a rook, or pawns trading perhaps on f6 or f7. There goes the pawn on f7. Gobble, gobble. King over. Gobble, gobble. And that's pretty much all she wrote. Easy technical ending. And there's mate. So that's a very, very convincing way to play. And not the only one either. We can, in fact, go back to, let's see, this moment. Knight f3. Let's see, did we even look at this line? I'm trying to remember. Yeah, I think we looked at the ultra aggressive try for black. Or did we? Let's see. Yeah, I don't think we did. I apologize. Let me take you through this here now. Well, actually, before I do that, let me look at the other standard game, which went like this. Black immediately lashed out in this position with d5. Exchanges. I'll just briefly run through this. And, well, let me go back. I want to show you guys a critical moment. Yeah, right here, in fact. This was not a good move by black. This is somewhat of a miniature blunder, if you will. It's a absolute inaccuracy. Okay, doesn't blunder a piece. Maybe that's overstating it, but it's a terrible inaccuracy. And after that move, well, we already looked at the knight d7, which is a very bad game for black. So again, black just got quickly demolished in that setup. Okay, so let's go back and look at the ultra aggressive setup for black. An immediate b5, boom. Bishop drops back to b3, kicking the knight. Knight drops back to e2. Knight out f6. Knight out to f3. Here the knights occupy the e file, destroying the pawn formations. So that file or column, I mean that column now is wide open, minus the knights. d5, ultra aggressive. Castles. Bishop out, preparing castles for black. d4, saying if you take my knight, I'm taking back with my pawn. Black castles. Knight offering an exchange on g3. Black says, nope, I'm not quite feeling that. Let me drop back to f6. Rook to e1. And remember, guys, in classical chess, it's always very, very important to occupy the center with your rooks. They do belong in open files. And queen to c7. Bishop g5. Knight to e8. Saying I don't want to be taken on f6. Bishop regroups at d2. Bishop out to e6. Boom. This is a very, very useful move. I love playing f4 whenever I get a chance. That's a gorgeous. It just feels like, you're just expanding and instantly pushing up black's king side and saying, what are you going to do about it? Knight comes to d7. Pawn pushes to f5. Ultra aggressive. Knight takes. And I do want to point out that that's tempting, but it's a huge inaccuracy in the position. Black gets very, very easy counterplay, and I'm not going to continue through that line. I did find one single win, meditating on every single position with Komodo 9 or 8, and I was able to eke out a win in about 96 moves. And I want to tell you guys that it was Occam's razor because one foul messed up, and I would have gone from winning to a draw. And if I'd missed two nuances in the position, I would have gone from winning to literally losing. So this is not a line I would ever recommend anybody play. So don't take here in that position. Instead, the money move is D takes E. Bishop drops back to C5, giving check. King hides, tucks away at H1. Bishop back, saying I don't want to be taken for free. Now there's two ways to play this position. You can just drop immediately in with Queen G4, which is very, very strong, and we'll look at a sample line in that setup. Oops, was there an inaccuracy there? Hmm. Well, anyways, I'm not meditating on every move here, but it is absolutely winning for white, barring any blunders. I'm sure there were better moves in the position. That's just a sample line. But let's go back to the position. I found that F6, believe it or not, has some kind of sting that the other position didn't quite offer, and it's very subtle as to why that is, but and the rook is much better on F1. That's very clear to me here. Even earlier looking at the position, I was thinking, man, if that rook was on F1, it'd be ideal, and certainly that's where it ends up going. Okay, queen up to D2, rook F4. Gobble gobble, rook takes, and I think, guys, you can see even with your naked eye that this is a god awful setup for black. Let's look at black's king for a second. He has one pawn for cover and two pieces marginally protecting him, the knight and the rook on G8, and you could maybe make a case that the other rook on A8 is slightly helping, just by extension of guarding the eighth rank, but that's pretty bad. So rook out to G6 and a show of desperation. Rook says takes, pushes E6, preparing obviously ideas of queen to H6, but first E1, hitting that knight, pawn down in desperation, just totally avoiding the bishop. Black is aware of the grotesqueness of the situation and tries to come over and shore this up, but trust me when I say it is not enough. And we'll just briefly look at what's going on here. This move here is just fantastic. Queen is gone, check, pawn up. Yeah, and it's a horrific ending. And that is mate. Mate on a stick, as GM Maurice Ashley is known to say. Yeah, so that's another really good way to play this system. Okay, other tries. Um, Here, back in this position on move 11. Did we already look at this setup? Let's see. Yeah. Oh no, we already looked at this. I'm sorry. I thought I had a different game loaded. Knight C7. Yeah, backing up to this position on move 20. Um, this is a bone-crushing win. I have to show this. Black apparently made some kind of inaccuracies, and I don't have to tell you that that is a resignable position. Black's rooks are gone. There's an invasion on the back rank. That bishop is looking very powerful on h4. The queen is ready to come in at any moment. Yeah, that's terrible, almost beyond belief. And there we go. That's about it. A couple spite checks. And that's checkmate. That's a weird looking mate. I don't think I've ever seen that motif before in my entire life. But it goes to show that from move 20, let me back it up. We had looked at that earlier system of bishop takes a1 for black, and in that game, queen went takes a1, but in this game, knight c7 immediately hitting the rook. But can that black rook uh, move? No, it really cannot. So that's a terribly demoralizing way to finish off an opponent in the bishop's opening. Look at that one more time. It's a phenomenal finish. Yep, there's mate. And guys, that is mate in 37 against an engine. I can't tell you what a system like this can do to a human being over the board or in blitz or rapid or even in classical. One misstep and they could just be crashing and burning within 10 to 15 moves. So it's a great system to play. Um, it's very rich in tactics, obviously. But there is a lot of strategy involved. You saw the rooks coming to the center files. We see some very classical chess being played even at this level. So, or even in such a system, rather, that it may not hold a very near and dear place in the hearts of super GMs. But I'm telling you, there's a lot of poison in the bishop's opening. I'll just briefly run through that main game again to finish. And you can plug this in your engines if you want to and come up with new lines or look at it. It's a yeah, taking here is also very good, but let's see, how good is it? Let's see. Yeah, it's really good. Yeah, that's also mate in 34, so either way. Alright guys, that's going to do it for today's video. I hope I gave you some good food for thought in playing the bishop's opening. It has many nuances, many rich tactical ideas and motifs and tabias. So give it a shot. It is phenomenal. It's very near and dear to my heart, and I hope it becomes near and dear to yours as well. Thanks for joining me today on Steve's Chess TV channel. Until next time, keep chessing. Bye bye.